Hi, everybody. What's going on? Thank you so much for being here and joining us. We're going to be playing Kunai Academy, which is a game that I designed. And some of these lovely people here helped me to develop and give me a lot of feedback, and have play tested it for about the last year or so now. It's currently up on Kickstarter, which is exciting. I hope you guys will check it out. Um, we're calming down a little bit. We started off a little intense, maybe, it's just like really in your face, aggressive, but now we're just going to chill out and talk about the game and have a good time. But yeah, thank you. Welcome for being here. And like I said, I'm Justin. I make games under Sweaterpunk Studios. You can check out this game. You can check out my previous game, Beam Swords and Bazookas. And Manapot Studios was kind enough to let us do this stream. So thank you so much to them. Thanks to Chris and to Zach, who have definitely been big supporters of Kunai Academy as well. And thank you so much to Liza, who let me come in and do this between our Gardens of Gulshan D&D 5e live play adventure. The climax for that is next week. And if you haven't caught any of that, please do. She put together a great adventure. There's stuff on YouTube. There's stuff here on the Twitch channel as well. But without further ado, let me let my players introduce themselves to you. And I guess we'll start with Liza, since I mentioned you already.
Hello, my name is Liza. You may recognize my face from other Manapot endeavors, including what is normally on at this time slot, and which Justin just told you all about. But today I am very excited to be here and playing Nikue, my gifted ninja.
And then I guess we'll go to Scott.
Oh, hello, my name is Scott. I am playing Kamataria Kusanado, or Kusanado to his friends. You may see me from other Manapot projects as well, but I'm very excited to be playing this game, which I love so very much, and promoting something that Justin's got going, available on Kickstarter. You should get in on that action.
Link is in the Twitch.
Thank you. I was just about to throw that there. And Reed.
Yes, hello everyone. Yes, I am Reed. I am reprising my role as guy who introduces himself last. Yeah, I will be playing this evening Kano Kyodin, the gutsy ninja. And we're going to be doing some excellent tactical shouting at people. And yeah, everything that Scott and Liza said, this is an excellent game. I'm looking forward to playing it again on the internet.
I'm glad you guys are as excited as I am. We are going to jump right into the action of this. We're going to be doing basically a day in the life of these young ninjas, which is what Kunai Academy is about. We have gotten together and created a fantasy world together. Part of this game is collaborative storytelling and picking background details that sort of coalesce to form your own fantasy world that you play in. But we've already established that, and we're going to jump right into the middle of this important day in these young ninjas' lives, and then we'll flash back to what their day was like before that, and then we'll wrap up everything at the end. We're going to do Pulp Fiction style game today. So you guys, also, if you are on the Twitch and you have any questions about the game at all, I'm going to be explaining a lot of like game mechanics as we go. This is very much a demo stream to just kind of show off some of the stuff that this game does. And we'll talk a little bit more about the theory behind some of that a little bit later on. But feel free to interrupt, and I'll be interrupting occasionally just to explain what's going on. So these three ninjas, about 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, are currently standing on the edge of a great tower of a castle made of dark lacquered wood. It is a tower that is in front of the City of Never Ending Lights behind it, which is sort of built into a mountain. There is many like small dwellings made out of clay and stone that are sort of like a pale white and beige generally. There's a large white tower in the middle of the city, and this castle sort of stands ominously at the edge of it, looking out over the dark valley below. The City of Neverending Light also sort of twinkles behind them as the sun is setting. The red light from the setting sun is reflecting on a network of mirrors and prisms. And there's a large crystal that goes up through the middle of this dark castle that sends light throughout the castle itself, and also powers special lenses on the edge of the castle wall that can sort of focus and shoot beams of light out into the darkness below them. Standing with them, towering over them a bit, is Masako. Masako is the mentor that Scott has created for his character, Kusanado. Scott, do you want to describe to us what Masako looks like?
I think Masako is a man in later middle age. He's probably kind of a heavy build and muscular guy, but he's starting to get thin, if nothing else. Like his starting to, like the tendons on his neck are starting to show. He's just having trouble keeping weight on, and he's aging like that. And he has a shaved head and very like severe features that are kind of inscrutable. He's wearing like a dark kimono, but there's also a hood, but he's got it pulled back, and he's probably like just kind of looking with the same kind of frozen expression, overlooking the land, kind of spread out before him.
Yeah, so he is surveying the land spread out before him, and he sort of turns to the three of you and he says, some call us crazy. Some in the village disown us. He says, but diving into the darkness and finding out what the dead are doing is integral to the security of this village. He says, some would like to hide behind the walls, hide in the light, and never know what goes on beyond our city. But he says that would make us sitting ducks, completely vulnerable to whatever they might be plotting, whatever magic they hold. We have to be the ones brave enough to find out what they're doing. We have to be the ones brave enough to push out into the darkness. And as he says that, you sort of see him like pull out his palms, and you see his thumbs begin to glow, and he sort of wipes on his face two like half moons, and they begin to like glow where he wiped, and then you see his eyes go like pale white. And he says, he walks up to you, Kusanado, and he goes to lean over to do the same thing to you, and he says, just like we've done before. And he goes to like wipe these two half moon circles below your eyes. What does Kusanado look like as he leans down towards you?
Kusanado is almost like a younger version of his master, though more in the way he holds himself and his expression than his actual physical characteristics. He's tall for his age, and kind of and slender, but very kind of hiding hidden strength. He has his hair, instead of shaved, it is kind of trimmed in a traditional short style, practical and but not flashy or pronounced. And he's wearing very similar dark garments, and he has a sheathed sword at his left hip.
So you're sort of very much mirroring his look. You like are like loyal to him. You look up to him. You want to be like him. And you guys have a close relationship, right? Like you guys
very close. He seems to have to either in action and in word to see me as the recipient of his knowledge, if I prove worthy.
Very cool. And yeah, so he looks at you, and I think he knows probably that you know that you've gone out with him before you were really supposed to. This was sort of supposed to be your first time out into the darkness, but he really wanted to he believes that you're destined to like walk in his footsteps, and he's taking you out before a little ways, and he knows that you were like greatly affected by the things that you saw. So he's sort of like, as he does that, he sort of like grabs you by the shoulders and sort of like in a stern way, and it's like, like, like with nothing really said, just is kind of like, like you got this, like.
Mhm.
And then he walks over to Nikue, and he sort of looks down and he smiles, and he says, Nikue, you've been training for this moment for so long. He says, I'm so sure that you are going to do great today. And as he leans over to do the same thing with his thumbs, who do we see?
I think you see sort of the very classically like happy perky kid uh from any anime. Nikue is
So the opposite of Kusanagi.
pretty much. I think she's like kind of never holding still, kind of like bouncing up and down on the balls of her bare and very dirty feet. Um, her uniform, while it sort of matches everyone else's, is clearly, very worn and kind of shabby, and she clearly does not care about that. Um, her hair is sort of a dark green and kind of weirdly tattered, and asymmetrical, and again just sort of shoved backward away from her face, however is convenient.
Cool. How is she approaching? She's very happy-go-lucky, so like how does she feel right now in this moment? Still kind of maintaining that, or?
I think in this moment it translates more as a sort of nervous excitement.
Yeah.
And she's trying her best to sort of hold still and be the person she's supposed to be, and sort of like holding her hands very like tightly behind her back, being like, yes, I'm very ready.
Yeah, no, he totally sees that within you, and he totally like sort of pats you on the head, not in like a condescending way, but very in like a tender way, and he sort of actually smiles at you. He knows that you and Kusanado have been training and friends for some time now. He's like an old family friend at this point to a degree. And he's proud of you in a way, for sure. And it's different between you than it is with Kusanada, I think. And then he walks to, again, the last to be introduced. He walks over to Ryoden, and Ryoden just arrived here today. You guys actually just met Ryoden not more than an hour ago. Ryoden was not part of the plan for today. And Masako leans over, and again he pulls the power into his thumbs, and he leans sort of in close to Ryoden, and he says, are you sure that you are prepared for what is to come?
And yep, and Ryoden is he's wearing something that's a little, I guess, maybe a little non-traditional for ninja. He's wearing something that looks almost a little bit more like a trench coat. It's actually got like a distinct, like it's got sleeves and kind of a more European style like collar. It looks almost a little clerical, if you will. No, sorry, I'm having cat problems. It's pretty plain in design, sort of utilitarian. It's got like a number of straps running across it to kind of just like keep it like tucked in close. Some pouches around the waist for who knows what.
But maybe it does not necessarily look like battle wear.
It doesn't look like traditional battle garb.
Right.
He looks more like somebody who he looks like somebody who like put on like sort of like his older coat and is about to go on like a hike, more than somebody who's about to like go to war. But
there is a hike involved, so you'll be fine.
Well, 50% is mission. I got it. Anyway, so also I should point out that Ryoden's he's on the short side actually. I don't know if anyone actually said how tall they are, but he's probably the shortest one here.
So you're kind of in opposition to Kusanado in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, and just in response to what Misako said, Ryoden always also kind of has like sort of a faint smile on his face. Doesn't always reach his eyes, but it's always kind of there. And he just says, I am proud that I was chosen to bear the light into dark places.
He says, okay. And he says, with this, you'll be able to see in the darkness. He says, your sight is one of the most important things that you carry. He says, and your speed is second most important. He says, we prepare to fight the darkness, but we attempt to avoid them if at all possible. He says, we're heading to scout a new position for a new prism. He says, if the city is ever to grow, we must eventually push out into the darkness. And he sort of like tightens up his robe, and he says, come, let's dive. And he sort of leaps off of the edge of the castle. There's sort of some lights sort of spotting around from other people in the castle, shining them where they can, as far out as they can. But he sort of kind of goes sliding down the side of the mountain and leaping off into the forest, ninja jumping through stuff, effectively. I imagine you guys follow?
Mm-hmm.
You are correct.
Great.
Quite so.
So, for most of you, this is a completely new experience, though you've heard a lot of stories about it. The darkness in this world, for those watching at home, is a place where the dead have returned, where the dead do not stay dead, and where they corrupt and defile and take all kinds of forms. The city that you've grown up in is sort of a mecca, a haven, a safe place, a place where magic is taking care of most of your worries. But select few push out into the darkness to fight and forage and find information about the undead and to push against it. You guys are jumping through what are mangled trees. There's odd sounds at every turn. Musako is flying, moving so incredibly quickly, and you get the sense probably testing you and making sure that you can keep up and survive. And he sort of like turns back to look at how you're handling this. And as he turns to do that, just what do we see real quick? How are you guys approaching this? Let's go in opposite order this time. So Reed, how is Ryoden reacting to jumping into this sort of unearthly, spooky, like there's fog and you think you see faces on trees and that sort of stuff?
I usually have so much more time to think about my reactions to stuff. Yeah. So I think Ryoden is still has that sort of faint smile on his face, but it's definitely not reaching his eyes right now. He seems a little on the twitchy side. Like you can definitely see like his eyes kind of keep darting around a lot. Because there's one thing from reading a lot of books and being extremely well informed on what it's like, and then it's quite another to sort of go jumping quite literally into it and then be like, oh yeah, all those terrible things that I read about could be behind that tree or that shrub.
So like, did Ryo? He's good to go. He's read about this. There's nothing he's gonna see that's like really gonna mess him up. Like he knows what to expect and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, the book learning, done that, no problem. He knows what is most likely to be there, but again, it's kind of another thing to know what might be there and then sort of be like, oh yeah, it might be there. So yeah, this is So yeah, he's tense. Not out and out scared or anything, but definitely like very, very like, kind of hyper vigilant. So
Ryan's not scared. How do the rest of you feel? How is Nikue?
I think, Nikoi is a little afraid, but every time she starts feeling afraid as they're running, despite what the master said about sight being super important, whenever she feels scared, she just closes her eyes and keeps running. And especially if it's like jumping between tree branches or something like that. And I think we just see her sort of closing her eyes and reaching out sort of midair, and the branch kind of realigning itself just to meet with her hand. And you see a little like moment of relief anytime she's touching something alive.
Okay. I think Nikue might also be hearing things. Might be hearing things that aren't. She's hearing things that are actually whispers. Nikue can hear faint moaning. Nikue can hear sort of people calling out the names of people that they've lost. And as that's sort of happening, Masako turns around and he sort of like catches you like with your eyes closed, I think. And he's like, and he sort of like stops on a branch before you guys, and like you know that means stop. And he looks back at you, and he just like looks at you directly, and he's like, keep your eyes open. Like he sort of silently communicates that to you. As he looks over in this moment at Kusanado, how is Kusanado feeling?
I think Kusanado is very nervous because he's the one who should be nervous, and he feels like he's being counted on to, not embarrass his master, to look like he knows what he's doing. So he's trying to emulate his master in terms of speed and style. These are the techniques that he's been taught and has tried to master, and has made a point of like getting the technique exactly right. So but
he's really pushing himself right now.
But his skill is so not that of his master that it only looks like, even if it were to be impressive, it looks only clumsy by the direct comparison, and he's aware of that.
Sure.
Subconscious.
Like doing it to the best of your ability would be one, but trying to do it
right. It's like if you were trying to sing a song exactly like a talented singer, it would be, if you were singing a different song in a different style, would be as obvious that you weren't as good. But the fact that you're doing the exact same thing poorly or not as well is only kind of exacerbates it.
Yeah. So where you guys have stopped, there is sort of like a low ridge off to one side, and a clearing opposite at the trees you're on are sort of looking towards. And if you start to move towards that clearing, Masako begins to move in that direction, but then immediately stops again abruptly. And you see him sort of ahead of you, sort of trying to make something out. And I think, Nikue, you can specifically hear someone like saying like, I don't want to be alone anymore. Like I think you're the only one that can hear that. And as Masako Masako is sort of trying to figure out what's going on and telling you to hold up behind him, suddenly from the right, from where this low hill is, a sort of black, huge needle-like arrow comes slashing into him and just impales him. And suddenly a crackle of lightning sparks from that black arrow and sort of sends his whole body convulsing, and he begins to fall out of the tree in front of you. As that's happening, as he falls over, you can kind of get a clear picture of what looks to be like a sort of slender, young, childlike figure with like completely black except for like a strange like white mask that is featureless. It seems to be where the cries of loneliness was coming from that you heard, Nikue. And to your right, you can see a figure that appears to be on some sort of a horse standing on top of the small hill, holding an arrow that they just shot. And suddenly coming, trampling through the trees, you can just like hear like grunting and raging noises as like something begins screaming, running towards where Masako fell, and has a huge war club that you could see like just ripping through some of the trees in front of you. And we're gonna roll initiative and get into some of the mechanics of this game. And Derek brought up
Right.
Sexy No Jutsu. That is something you could do in the game if you wanted to, but I don't think any of these players in particular are going to be employing it here. Let's get some
Probably
battle
not.
music going.
Yeah.
Just for that, I'm going to invent it mid-battle.
Dang it, Reed. You would.
Also, it might not be sexy to all, but it might be sexy to me.
Duly noted.
Different ninjas have different tastes.
That's
True. It's very true.
Is this a good boss battle music? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so speaking of that particular technique, one of the things I wanted to do in this game was players to really the things that they do in their own way. I wanted to give like definitive mechanical, results from different techniques that you take, but there's definitely a lot of room for skinning something the way you want it. So there's different techniques you can take that are very powerful illusions that if you wanted to could be any sort of illusion you wanted it to be. That being said, we're going to deal out initiative. Initiative is going to be playing cards. You're going to take one suit from a normal deck of playing cards and just deal it out to the players. And you're going to go in card order. I'm just going to do that over here. I'll let you guys know when you go. Unfortunately, this lonely spirit in the middle in the clearing is going to go first. But then after that is going to be all of so Kusanada will be the first up after them. So another mechanic that I want to talk about is obstacles. So as Masako falls to the ground, you guys can feel the ability to see in the pitch blackness of these dead woods fading from your eyes. And suddenly, as you see these mysterious creatures, everything goes black, and you're going to be dealing with a level 2 obstacle that is the deep darkness. It means that you're going to have disadvantage on any of your physical attacks that you make. For people watching, they can interact with this obstacle. Obstacles and edges are something you're going to write down and give a name. The obstacles are things that the GM and the bad guys make, and they have very specific effects. And the edges are things that the players can make, and they allow them to do rerolls and stuff. So the current obstacle in play is the deep darkness. There's also an obstacle for this giant war club that this beastly half-boar man soldier seems to be wielding. You think that if you get hit by that and don't defend very well against it, that it's going to cause you to become hurt, which is a condition in the game. And also the voice of this lonely crying spirit sounds very innocent and is kind of messing you up a little bit. So the innocent voice of the lonely spirit is going to give you disadvantage on defending against verbal attacks, which is exactly what it's going to do right now. So the different attributes for players and enemies are different dice sizes. So this lonely spirit is going to call out to these ninja who are approaching it, and they're just gonna look in your direction. They can sense that someone is there in the darkness, and they're just gonna say, please, I just want anyone near me, please, will you please talk to me? And they're gonna make a verbal attack. They can split the verbal attack up against different targets, but they only got one hit. And I think since Nikoe is the one who kind of clearly hear it, not just physically, but sort of supernaturally, I think this is getting to you especially.
That's not super.
What's that?
That's not super.
Yeah. So you are going to take one hit, would cause one strain to Nikoe, but she can try to roll to defend to avoid more strain.
And I defend against a verbal attack with mind?
With mind, yep.
Okay, I have a d8 in that, so here's hoping. I rolled an 8, so I got one hit.
Oh, you do have disadvantage because it has such an innocent, sweet voice.
No, it's so sweet and cute. All right, so I'll roll a d6 and take whichever of these two is the lower. I got a 6 on the d6, so I defend against it anyway. I'm used to spirits talking to me.
So you scored a
That
hit on
tracks.
both of the dice that you.
I did.
Wow, that was a really great job.
Yeah,
okay,
I rolled
so you
real
only take
lucky.
1 strain from that
Well
attack.
played.
When these dice are being rolled, basically they're like d6s through d12s, and if you ever score a 5 or above on any dice, that's a hit, and that'll have different effects. I'll explain as we go. If you ever score a 10 or above on any of those dice, that's 2 hits. You're going to add up all the hits from whatever dice you roll, and that's going to be the total hit for the action that you take, and that'll either deal strain to your opponents or take away obstacle levels, create edges, that sort of stuff. You'll see as we go. Okay, so it's sort of affecting you a little bit, but what do you think? How do you think Nico is reacting?
I think again, Nikoi has had spirits talk to her in the past, and she knows that this spirit probably isn't really, or believes that the spirit isn't really trying to hurt her.
It just actually is lonely.
Yeah, and so
you're
she
not,
feels
intimidated by it.
right. It's less like scary and more like sad.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so Kusanado up next. How's Kusanado reacting to Masako being dropped like that in this dangerous foreign terrain?
I think he is going to act very protectively and is going to dive down after his master to defend against the coming. Because isn't it the large war club wielding Oni storming towards where his master has fallen? So
it is, and as you jump down, even in the darkness, you sort of hear like a grunting snout and can sort of see like slobber flying and this thing smashing through trees.
Does our moon shaped charms that were given to us, does that have any effect against the darkness?
No, the reason that the darkness is because your master being knocked out caused your charms to fade.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm going to jump down and try to stand in defense, and I'm going to close my eyes and listen for the slobbering attack and see if I can use my other senses and try to overcome the deep darkness and become, and kind of move past it. Either re-engage the charm myself or try to become touch into my other senses if possible.
No, that's very cool. I think you guys are like ninjas trained in magical martial arts. So I think blind fighting is the sort of thing you might have some experience with.
So I'm going to try to overcome this obstacle, overcome an obstacle, which is I'm going to roll mind plus an attribute or ninja art that reflects your approach. I'm thinking I'm going to roll into my spirit. So my mind is not strong, but my spirit is, I can't rationalize this through. I'm gonna kind of touch on this kind of inner void power to try to see if I can come and play with this.
Hold up, I'll give you advantage.
Okay,
I will use teamwork.
Yeah,
so
sorry about that.
Every character has teamwork that they can use once per round. Basically, you can provide advantage on roll to any ally on defensive rolls, attack rolls, any kind of roll, as long as it's just once per round, and as long as you could narratively help with whatever they're doing given the situation. Advantage will allow you to add a d6 to your roll, and multiple advantages will allow you to add multiple d6.
Well, let's see how that does. Okay, I still have one success, and unfortunately, isn't this a level 2 obstacle, correct?
It is a level 2 obstacle, so...
But, I'm sorry, go ahead, you do you.
No, you go ahead.
I am the determined ninja as my playbook, and I have the ability to push the limits. I can take one strain, which we haven't really talked about much yet, but I can take one strain in order to change the result of a die you rolled to the result of your choice. I'm going to turn the 6 I rolled on my d10 into a 10 so that I can completely overcome this power. And I think in trying to get in touch with my other senses, I'm hoping to, in overcoming the obstacle, kind of realign my comrades in arms as well, with the perfection of my stance and
Right.
my commitment to excellence in this particular.
Yeah, so
pursuit.
you're like remember the blind flighting training or use your
Yes.
other senses, like that sort of stuff, and like you're kind of like kicking them into that mode as well. They see
Yeah.
you immediately dive down in there into the action. Like, yeah, I think that totally works. So yeah, so just to recap, so Scott used his special ability from being the determined ninja. That's basically his class. It's his ninja archetype. In order to boost the number of hits that he got on his roll so that he could take out the darkness obstacle that was in play. So the darkness obstacle is now gone.
One just to pile on there real quick,
Yeah.
because an important part of using teamwork is that it has to make narrative sense to do so.
Oh, right. Yes. Please explain how you helped him with that.
Yeah. So basically, I think what I would have done is I saw you jumping down into the darkness and deduced that you were probably going to do more or less what you did. Now, light is my element. So I am just going to. I'm going to guess maybe you're going to try to bring at least a little bit of that ward back or something like that. So I'm basically just going to try to spark that a little bit back to life myself and give like at least a little bit of a luminous glow that might give you minimal vision in the immediate area around you. And then if you combo that with your blind fighting skills, yeah. So
Cool.
basically, I'm just going to try to like reignite the ward a little bit. I don't think I can do it as good as Misako could.
Seems very neat to me. Okay, so next up is Nikue. Nikue suddenly also getting just a little bit of a glimmer of the outlines of shape around her from this magic, and also reaching out with her other senses to sort of feel what's happening around her is up. What would she like to do?
I think feeling a little bit of that, Nikoi realizes, oh yeah, there's so much more here at our disposal. And I think is going to kind of also slide down whatever tree she was perched up in, and just sort of keeping one hand on it, another hand on the ground, and just start spreading out her awareness through all of the nearby plants, trying to sense, like the relative positions of these things from their contact with this network. And I'm going to use a technique that I have, my elemental charge technique, which is my name for this technique is the 1,000 Hands of the Earth. So I am going to spend some chakra, which is a thing that I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the first technique of the game. There's many techniques to choose from. Most of them are linked to either illusion arts, elemental arts. They all have, their own names, their own effects, but you're also encouraged to name them a unique name to your character. So Nikoi is using, you said, the 1,000...
1,000 Hands of the Earth.
Very cool. So you're attempting to reach out to the consciousness of the plants around you and connect yours to it and create an edge doing so.
Mm-hmm. So this edge I roll using elemental arts and spirit, and I gain hits. I gain an edge level equal to the number of hits that I score. I got 3 hits. I rolled a 10 on my D10 and a 7 on my D12. I have a D12 because my playbook is the gifted ninja, so I just have one attribute that I'm exceptionally talented at.
Yeah, Nikue is the only one that can start with a D12, and she's putting it to good use. Okay, so you are going to be dealing 3 hits to these enemies that are around you. You can split that up however you want because it's a... Sorry, did I...
This is my other technique. I'm just generating edge.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
So I have a level 3 edge, which is my 1,000 Hands.
Great. So the edge is just normally in play, like in person, we would just sticky notes and usually use like little check boxes to sort of track how many levels are there, how many have been negated, how many up. But we're just sharing a document now. And what are you calling it again, the edge?
I'm just calling it my technique name.
Yeah, that's totally fine. You're just
yeah.
like connected, rooted into the consciousness of plants, and that is going to very much so help you in the fight ahead. All right, Ryoden, what are you up to?
Really getting to the root of the problem here. Yeah, so yeah, I know. I'll leave. I'm sorry. Okay. Quick question. So we've got the darkness is gone. Yes.
The
As an obstacle
is gone as an obstacle. It's still very dark, but you find yourself able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Based on your training.
Right. Yeah. No. I'm specifically like in terms of obstacles still on the field. There was also abnormally innocent spirit and giant club. Right.
Yes, there's a giant club level 2 edge, which will, like I said, cause someone to be hurt if they're hit with it and don't defend against it. And there is also the innocent void. I should be throwing these obstacles in our shared document, and I will do that.
Right. Okay, so I think I would like to. I think I would like to try to overcome an obstacle myself. I think I'm going to go for the abnormally innocent spirit as an obstacle, because that whole disadvantage against verbal attacks thing is for the birds.
Sure. How are you attempting to innocent voice?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So yeah, my move on this one is going to be actually. Wait a second. Could I do have a plan, and it just occurred to me I could maybe make this reversal.
Could.
Yeah. You have to declare that beforehand, yes?
You do have to declare it beforehand. I would also be curious on what your idea is for doing that. But just so people at home know, one resource every character also has is a flashback. And people can invoke a flashback to recall a time in their past that gives them the sort of like grit or emotional ability or whatever like challenge is in front of them at the moment. And once per battle, they can either just get +1 hit on any action that they're taking, or they can do a reversal, which is overcoming an obstacle, but also changing that obstacle into an edge for the team. So yeah, is that something you want to do now, or you want to save it?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's give it a try. So, okay, so the flashback is this. So we cut back to probably somewhere under one of the various churches, temples, what have you, of the light keepers, the clerics, and Ryoden is there with Yusunaga Jin, his mentor, who is in fact one of the light keepers, one of the clerical cast, and they are. She is demonstrating something to him. There is like a enclosed cage area, and inside the cage there's what looks kind of like an operating table, and laying on it is something that is pretty clearly dead. It looks actually like a very just kind of like slim, like pale skinned, kind of androgynous figure. The very long hair sort of maybe suggests female, but it's kind of hard to tell. And one of its arms is draped over the side, and you can see very clearly like 3-inch long talons dangling from the tips of its fingers, which very much do not match with the rest of it. And Jin is just saying, always remember that no matter how these creatures present themselves to you, it is important to remember what they truly are. This one killed 2 who were taken in by a frail appearance that invited their aid. Do not make the same mistake, and make sure that your companions do not make that mistake. So, I remember that. So, Meanwhile, back in the present, my move is to do some sweet illusion magic. and I'm going to distort its innocent-sounding voice to make it sound like what it actually is, which is something terrible.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my plan.
Would you like some get a little bit of my some help from this? Because I'm happy to provide.
This is a big one. If you succeed or fail on this one, it will swing things significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will take your help. I was kind of inspired by how willing you were there to just attack the darkness. So yeah, I'll draw some extra resolve from that.
Right.
And here we go. That is 2 hits.
Okay, great. So you the innocent voice. You describe to me what you think happens.
Right.
You get to name what this now becomes.
Let's change the name to True Voice. Because I don't know now, admittedly this is my interpretation of what its true voice is.
Sure.
But basically, like, in my mind, what this thing probably is like some sort of like undead creature or some sort of like evil spirit that is just making itself appear appealing. So I am going to just like distort every time it speaks. I'm going to just also speak and just project my voice and distort using illusion magic what it is saying so that it sounds demonic.
Sure. So
scary.
I think it can even tell that this is what you're doing, and you succeeded on it. And like the mask that was on it just like sort of comes falling off at a certain point, and you do see underneath just like an old and withered face that's just like has like small little like sharp teeth, and it's just like bearing them against you, and it's just like it's like tricks are what I do, and like you guys see its true nature. And that, makes you less intimidated by it for sure.
It should steal your resolve to fight. You're not attacking him. And then, and Ryoden's ever-present smile just gets a little bit bigger on that one. Moving on.
Very cool. So next up, as you're saying that, though, actually, I'm going to roll and see what happens, and then I'll tell you what's going on. All right. So, I think that you have jumped down sort of towards where Kusanado is, and striking down from the top of this cliff is another like black bolt that cracks into lightning along the ground, and it's a bit diffused because it is like running along the ground, but both of you get like a jolt of electricity as you're standing there. You each take 1 strain from this elemental attack. You each need to roll body in order to try to defend against any extra strain that you take.
It's a shocking turn of events.
Tis.
Body, huh? I failed the roll.
Okay, so you take an additional strain, so you take 2 from this attack.
Okay.
And what about Ryoden?
Sorry, I didn't realize it was in there too. I somehow heard it was hitting Sako.
Both of you guys.
Cool.
So when you make an elemental or verbal attack, you can split up hits between different targets. When you make a martial arts or a illusion attack, they're single target attacks, but they do more damage if they fail to defend against them.
All right, so I also failed. Body's not really.
No.
Okay, so you'll also take 2 strain from this as you guys feel like the electricity coursing up your legs and like sort of ache and pain. If you look up towards this cliff as the sort of lightning is shimmering in this sort of dead forest, you see a figure in like a long white gown that also has sort of long black hair, and you can't get a clear image of its face, but it appears to be sitting atop like a horse made out of bones, but not like a horse skeleton. It's like made out of many human bones that are sort of like charred and formed into the shape of a horse that appears to be moving as this lightning arrow shooting rider looks down at you from this cliffside. And then the angry spirit sort of comes crashing through the trees closer towards Kusanado, because I think you said you jumped down and were protecting your master. As it gets closer to you, you can sort of see that this appeared to be like someone wearing like soldier's armor at some point, but sort of strange like boar-like hide has begun to like grow out of this armor in weird places, and the huge studded club that it swings even has like tufts of hair sticking out of it in weird ways, and it just has like a maul snout of like a pig and just like big tusks, but you can still sort of see like the eyes of a human. It's like sort of a ghastly huge figure, and just like screaming in anger, coming in at you, and it's going to attempt to attack you with this giant club that it has. So let me roll to do that. All right. So it scored 2 hits against you.
Okay.
What were the results of its roll, Justin?
A 6 and a 7.
On
On
what
2
dice?
2d10s.
I would like it to re-roll that. I'm going to use my elemental binding technique.
Sure.
And I think as it's running forward, just some roots kind of start lifting up out of the ground and it trips a little bit. So I'm spending a level of edge to force the enemy to re-roll dice.
Yeah, so one of Nikue's techniques allows her to spend her edge levels to make enemies re-roll. It's just for the players, but this one can hinder them. So let's see. So it did knock 1 hit off, and it's only going to deal 1 strain to Kusanado, as it's sort of tumbling and still ripping vines off, and branches are getting in its way, but it's still swinging down at you with this giant club. And I will remind you that if you fail your defense roll against it, you will receive the hurt condition.
I am also going to give you teamwork on your defense roll.
All right.
Again, because
I'm going to use my yielding technique, which is body substitution.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, or also you can just do that.
Or that. That also is good.
So I get to add my spirit to my body defense. And I also get a d6 because of that. So
Yeah, because of the advantage.
I rolled 1 success, which means that
That's
add spirit to defense, avoid the attack if you score a hit, which I did. So that attack
So what
has
are you
been
calling
divided.
this again? And what does it look like?
This is the yielding river, where as the club comes in, I almost seem to, my body reach, like almost goes to meet the club, and as it's about to make contact, I sway with it almost directly, slide out of the way, and then come back with my fluid stance technique, which is called the splashing puddle. And I get to make a martial art attack in response to a physical attack against me.
All right, that's
that
amazing.
I shall also do.
Do it.
And that is 2 successes, double 5s.
Yes.
Okay, it is going to attempt to defend against your attack. What's that?
Just a quick question, logistical question. I forget. Does our teamwork come back at the top of the round or after our turn?
At the top of the round.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I already used it a long time ago.
Yep, I think you guys have all used up your teamwork for this round. Okay, so it's going to try to defend against your 2-hit attack. It is going to defend against it, but it's going to take 2 strain.
Okay.
And that was a very cool move. Yeah,
So I'm out of chakra.
Completely...
But it was worth it.
But it was cool.
So basically,
Don't worry, you'll
dodge out of
regain
the
1
way,
at the beginning.
and as I come back, my blade comes. Oh yeah, my blade comes out with a gleam of light as it hits whatever moonlight is available. And I slash through the thing, and then resheath the sword. But I'm already, like, you can tell I'm spent, as in like this entire moment was crystallized and took an eternity for me, and I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted, as if this whole moment was, was a whole fight in and of itself.
I mean, that is a really cool moment though. Like, you jump down there to defend and to do this thing, and you like perfectly defended against it. You like got an excellent counterattack in. He has a thick hide, so it didn't do quite as much damage as it could have, but you still pulled off an excellent opening move against them. All right, let's do initiative for the next round. All right.
So we redo the initiative every round.
Yep, initiative is each round, and each card, everyone gets one card. There are some traits and stuff that you can take to give you, 2 cards to pick from on your turn, but nobody here took that particular trait. And yeah, just also pointing out that Scott's character Kusanado signature weapon trait, which was the sword that he was referencing, that gives him one level 1 edge at the beginning of the fight that he can use whenever he wants to do so, but he still has that right now. Okay, so Kusanado, you actually are up first in this initiative. Then it's going to be the boar spirit, and then the cliff, and then it'll be Nikue and Ryoden, and then the lovely spirit that has been revealed for its true self after that.
Okay, well, as it is the beginning of my round, I regain 1 automatically.
And you
also, you go ahead. You tell him. You tell him how your game works.
So at the beginning of each person's turn, you regain 1 chakra, 1 spent chakra, and you roll your spirit die and remove any strain that you might have gained for each hit that you score.
Yeah, I didn't roll well on that, but I also strain as it is, and I'd rather not push the limit. So my strain remains at 3 out of 8.
Okay.
But
not too bad.
As I drew the sword back, I take a breath and then do a counterattack at the hopefully still distracted creature that's stormed past me. But we'll see how that goes. I'm going to make another attack.
Teamwork.
I will.
How's
your teamwork working?
Yeah. How are you helping?
I'm going to help with one of my signature abilities, which I call Triptych Flare. Basically, you were rhymed you were briefly lined in a flare of light as 2 copies of you made of light appear and strike simultaneously in a confusing barrage. So,
ooh. Confusing barrages are my favorite kind.
Make the most of it.
I'll do my best. Oh man. Okay, I got 2 hits. I'm going to use my edge to turn that in, try to get that into a 3rd hit, because I rolled a 3 on my D8, so I feel like chicken tonight.
Do it.
That's 3 hits.
Nice.
Yes.
That's great. And because of Ryoden using coordinated strike ability, right, was the technique that you described, that means that correct. The enemy will have disadvantage on their defense roll. So let's see what happens. All right, so unfortunately, they succeeded on both of their dice with disadvantage. So when you have disadvantage, you add a d6 to your roll like you would with advantage, but you ignore the highest result. So I added a d6 and rolled the d10 for body for this monster, but he scored a hit on each dice that he rolled. So even if he ignores the highest, he still scored a hit. So
1 second.
He doesn't take extra damage. No, yeah.
Did you use your power attack?
No,
Scott?
I didn't have a chakra for it.
Well, then never mind.
All right.
But I had 3 hits, right?
You had 3. Yeah, no, you still got the 3.
Okay.
It could be potentially 2 more if
Got it.
if they failed their defensive.
Okay, so 3 goes 3. 3's 3.
Yeah, 3 is 3. So it's looking a little bit beat up, actually. Are you just slicing into it, basically?
Yeah, so I basically went by it, sheathed, and then turned around, hoping I would see it falling dramatically. Instead, I see it still lumbering around. So then I kind of hurry over and slash at it again with a lot less of the skill and and technique, but still pretty effective. And the sword, which is very powerful, does a lot of the work for me. So the Tide Cutter,
and
gets
it is now up, and I think fight with you. So I think as you're slicing it up, and it's like large and sort of lumbering, and it's like attempting to swing this big club around, but you keep like evading it and getting in strikes where you can. And I think it just charges right at you with its war club held very high, and he's gonna attempt to attack you with it again.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. So that's gonna be 2 hits.
Okay.
Would you like advantage on your defense?
I really would.
Yeah,
that'd be
please.
Nice.
Take it. I think.
I rolled a 6 and a 4. Oh, so close. So I rolled one of those. I rolled a 6 and with the advantage I rolled a 4. So only 1 hit or 1.
Yeah,
so
but you succeeded on the
I succeed, right. So I don't take any additional.
As long as you score any hit on the defensive roll, that means you don't take damage. So and in this case, because of the obstacle that is the war club, you will also not receive the hurt condition.
Yay.
So
that is key.
Okay, good to know. I'm pretty beat up though. I too am feeling the effects of this epic battle.
Okay.
It is epic.
This creature on the cliff side, again, I'm going to... The trick I learned from Scott is make the roll before you describe what happened, because if you failed, then you didn't do the cool thing that you just described. So let me roll first, and then I'll tell you what happened.
True.
That's my turn.
Well, I rolled very well, actually.
So you get to describe something really cool.
Exactly.
I
did.
I think I might make you re-roll that if you rolled it really well, Justin.
Okay, I got 3.
You got 3 hits? Yeah, I think I'm gonna make you
create an edge. Okay, yeah, I'll just go ahead and
just go ahead and re-roll that. I think the vines have begun getting up to the top of the hill at this point.
Thank you, Nikolai.
They are very distracted with the other stuff going on. You do have some time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still 2 hits.
Better.
It is better actually for this. So what's happening is this creature on the edge of the cliff, suddenly its hair goes flying back in every direction. You see a maw open up on its face. It's like featureless white face otherwise, but it opens up this like black mouth. It starts shrieking, and it lifts up into the air, pulling all of the bones of this like horse of like these weird blackened bones with it, and it begins to just like whirl around in circles as like lightning starts to spin around it, and these blackened bones start spinning around it, and it just starts screeching, and there's just like a torrent of like bone and screeching screams. Here, let me paste the name of the obstacle.
Bone Storm? Like, is that what it is?
Bone Storm.
For the viewers to see as well. So this is the Screaming Lightning Whirlwind of Blackbone Vengeance. It's
that tracks.
I mean, that tracks, but no.
It's going to reduce the strain taken by 1, so against that enemy, and each of you will receive 1 strain at the beginning of your turn as long as this obstacle is in play. So this is level 2, reduced from level 3 because of Liza's grasping roots, or Nikue's grasping roots, rather. And next up is Nikue.
Okay, so
take a strain.
This is bad.
Yeah, take a strain.
Oh, I take 1 strain. I don't like that.
I mean, I feel like I'm feeling a little stressed out by this. I don't know about you.
I do, however, get 1 chakra back, and I will roll to recover any strain.
Yep.
I did not.
Okay.
I rolled a 3. Yeah.
Again, we're under a lot of pressure right now.
It's true. I think seeing this...
Big day, you know?
Seeing
First
this...
mission going terribly bad.
Yeah.
The mentor is unconscious. Kusanado is fighting with this giant boar demon thing. whatever that is just happened.
Yeah, it was
The
just
spirit
green
that I
light roll with
felt
black
bad for
vengeance.
looks scary now. I think Nikoi's big impulse is to just hide and try and protect her friends. So
Love this.
what I'm going to do is try and like pull all of the plant matter and material that I've been putting my consciousness out into, just sort of into like a dome around us. I'm gonna try and like make this like shell
Whoa,
to
okay. That's
block
very
these
cool.
horrifying things that are happening. So I'm going to
Okay.
use my elemental release technique, um,
Ooh, cool.
which
Mm.
both is an attack and overcomes obstacles. I'm hoping that maybe just not seeing this awful storm will perhaps negate some of its
It can't
effects.
see it. It can't see me.
If I can't see it, it can't hurt me.
Yeah, sounds like a great plan.
That's how magic works. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So I'm going to roll an
It's kind of
elemental arts
opposite of
attack.
ninja logic. In theory, being hidden would make you more deadly, but you know.
Oh, I rolled a 4 and a 2, so I'm gonna spend my last edge level to re-roll
Okay.
Yeah. Good call.
because it was a very bad roll.
Is there any extra teamwork floating around?
I've already used.
Yeah. I've got some. I think.
Okay.
Yes, take it.
All right.
I forgot.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that before I spent the edge. Can I re-roll the teamwork die as well?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
For the viewers at home, you should say you're doing teamwork before you make the roll, but it's okay.
All right. I got 3 hits.
Ooh.
And
okay.
given my elemental charge ability, I just used the last edge level, but I think the last time we did this, we rolled
Yes.
that I could apply it. So I get an extra hit on any attack. So I have
Yeah.
4 hits
There's
here.
a lot happening, so let's break it down a little bit so people can understand. So you had one edge level that was created with a technique that allows you to add hits whenever you make an elemental attack. You also use that edge level to re-roll that attack, but we're saying that if you had it at the beginning of making the attack, it's fine, it still applies. Since you used that last edge level, though, that edge goes away. You're using the technique that you're rolling for to both create an edge and make an attack, each of which will be equal to the number of hits that you scored. So you're kind of doubling up on your actions for the turn by using this particular powerful technique.
Yeah.
You scored 3 hits on it because you rolled 2, I guess. Oh,
No,
you
I rolled
got
3.
4. You rolled 3 and then got an additional from the previous edge. Wow, that's cool. All right, so
Makes
yeah,
sense.
what's going on? What did you do? You can split up these hits since it's an elemental attack as you'd like, and you can also negate the obstacles before we resolve any of the attack.
I think I'm going to negate both of these obstacles. I think what happens is all of this plant matter kind of coalesces into this dome, and the wall springs up sort of between Kusanado and the boar demon, and it knocks this war club just like, I think the war club maybe even just gets like wrapped up into this fast growing shell of plant matter.
Easily as everything's grabbing and expanding, I imagine that could just be ripped right out of its hands.
And I think maybe even like a whole tree kind of bending over maybe knocks this flying spirit for a loop.
Ooh, yeah. So it managed to, like, I mean, what's better weathering a storm than a tree?
Yeah, good
Just
point.
reaches right through there, and yeah, grab, like, apply all of your hits to her or spread them around.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna lay the hurt down on the bad flying bone spirit.
All right.
It's good. It's a good call. It's a good call.
She succeeded on her defense roll, but she does take that 4 strain, which is a very good hit against her. Yeah, I think she goes flying. She gets like caught up in this, thriving mass of foliage, and gets dragged down, thrown to the ground, and goes skidding along in the black dirt. Okay, so next up is Ryoden. Very strong turn, though.
That was kind of great. I feel a lot better. I mean, after dome.
Yeah, you guys have cleared all the obstacles. It's now just regular enemies with nothing standing in your way and nothing threatening you other than them just attacking.
I'm sure that that's exactly the lay of the land, and there won't be anything else bad happening. All right, cool. Well, I don't take strain from the horrible bone storm of destruction, so let me just see if I regain any. The answer is yes. Actually, I do. Okay. Yeah, so I think the core thing has been disarmed, but I'm guessing that it doesn't exactly need its club to still put the hurt on Kusanado, so I'm going to help with that. So yes, it's time to bust out the diplomancy, and I'm going to cast Harsh Language. I actually...
I will let you know that I might be a little strict here about what I interpret as being a viable thing you can say to this raging boar monster. Just that's throwing that out there.
Totally fine. But I'm gonna do it anyway.
Please.
But yeah. So I mean, I am gutsy. Hey, this will definitely work. Yeah. So I've been sort of, I think, still up in the trees. I haven't actually really moved at all for this fight as of yet. So
strategy.
That's always it's a winning move. But now I leap down and land, kind of like sort of land like on the border of where this dome has appeared. I believe Nikoi sort of put it a little bit, almost like it erupted between Kusanado and the boar thing. So I hop down right on the edge of where it is, sort of putting myself like right at the edge of the dome, sort of almost if Kusanado allows it between him and the boar thing. And I let a little bit of like light energy kind of coalesce around one of my hands, and I just sort of gesture wide at the dome that has just appeared, and I say to the boar thing, "As you can clearly see, the powers of death are no match for the powers of life, and we have not yet even begun to wield the true light. Be gone."
Ooh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So yes, as I said, deploying harsh language.
So Reed is employing Gutsy Ninja archetype, and enemies have disadvantage against his verbal attacks.
That is true.
I think it's charismatic, right?
That is also correct. And charismatic means it's a good combo. Charismatic gives me advantage on my verbal attacks. So I think we're about to figure out if this thing actually speaks our language or if it only speaks club.
It's a real club kid.
Yeah, the gosh.
I mean, in fairness, we all sort of speak that language. You don't really need to understand it. All right. The answer is it's sort of. I think the translation is a little harsh here. I get one hit.
Okay.
So the language barrier is definitely a factor, but it does have disadvantage.
He does have disadvantage. It's also not great at defending against this sort of thing. Anyway,
I picked that up from context clues.
Yeah, from context clues. So it does defend on. It does fail on its defense, and you deal 2 more strain to it, which it has it. It's sort of like it's hurt now. It's like, at this point, it's kind of getting to like bleed like a weird, like super dark red blood. It's not dark red. It's super dark red, and so it's starting to bleed and it's powering from like this light that you're like shining in its face.
Vanta red.
What? Fanta red, yeah.
Vanta red blood.
Fanta red blood. It's cool. Bubbling. It's as if someone shook it up and it's starting to fizz out. It looks like it's kind of frightened of you, and it looks to be in very bad shape.
Excellent. Also, Justin, I would just like to say, in my professional opinion, as far as your descriptions of all these creatures go, stop it. Moving on.
Okay, so I think as you're doing that, your old friend, the lonely spirit, who you had exposed for what it really was.
We're really more
Sort of like walks up to where you are, and it sort of like taps you on the leg as you're like pointing the thing at the boar. Sort of like looks up at you, and it's like, don't you realize you're already dead? And it's gonna attempt to cast an illusion against you.
Oh.
Get out of my brain.
Oh, failing terribly.
Oh.
Doesn't get any hits at all. So it just says that to you, and then it like blinks to like eyes. Its eyes have like 3 irises, and it just blinks them at you, and it's like, don't you realize you're already dead?
And then you're like, no, I'm not.
Doesn't that
good
freak you
comeback.
out?
Yeah, I think it's not what it's not what Yoda would actually say, but the urge to just say "no, you" is.
It's like, yeah, Ryan says no, you, but like you.
Yeah, no, I think like yeah, no, I think he just sort of like looks down at the thing, like, you know, like I was kind of doing a thing with him, and just sort of like brings the hand that was holding the light kind of down, like sort of just holds it like in front of the lonely spirit's face, and he just like sort of he just like gives him like a slightly larger grin, shows a little bit of teeth, and then just like goes back to looking at the boar spirit, basically sort of like I'll get to you in a second, just hold on.
Great. I can't wait for this lonely spirit to come around and kill all of you.
Just we're gonna ignore it the whole fight and just like
I'm hoping.
could happen.
You know what? It gets to go first. So
Does
as
it?
this exchange is happening, let me roll before I describe it.
Fair.
As this is happening, you do feel as though the earth below you is like tugging at you, as if it's pulling at you to be buried alive. You're gonna need to roll against this illusion.
It's less great. Hold on, let me get my find my notes. Here we go. Roll against illusion, you say?
Yes, you're gonna make
Very
a
good.
mind defense roll.
Don't mind if I do.
Do you need any help, Reed?
No, mine's my good stat, so I think I'm right. And I did, in fact, roll a 9, so defense successful.
Sure. So you momentarily do begin to think like the earth below you is tugging at you, but you know, you just had this exchanges with this guy. You kind of know enough about illusions to understand what's happening to you, and you can start to shake it off.
Yeah, like I'm an illusionist. I knew he was expecting this, so I just kind of start to sink. Then I'm just like, no.
Yeah. All right. And next up is Nikue, and just so you guys know, the Ryoden, and then the 2 last enemies are going to go, and then Kusanado.
Lame.
So Nikue is up.
I really don't like this angry lightning bone lady. She really freaks me out.
Feel ya.
So I think what I'm gonna try to do is like peel up the sides of the dome like a Venus flytrap, because like
Okay.
the tree like smacked her onto the top of it, so I'm gonna try and kind of like burrito her up in it.
Okay. Yeah. That's very cool.
Just kind of like contain it, be like, please stay away from me and my friends. And just make a straight elemental attack.
Go for it.
First though, I should probably.
Did you recover chakra and try to recover strength?
That is what I'm doing right this very moment, because I forgot about it until just now.
No.
I do recover 1 strain. I rolled a 6. Okay. So I'm going to make my elemental attack. 2 hits.
Okay. All into her?
Yes.
All right. You are hurting her very badly, but she still seems to just barely. It's like the Venus flytrap is beginning to like crush in on her, and she's just barely like everything in her seems so like determined, and like kind of it's like her eyes lock in with you, and you see that she's like scrabbling with like unholy undead like quickness, trying to like knock all of this stuff off of her that's climbing on her, and she wants to come after you. Ryoden is up next.
Oh boy. All right, hang on a sec. Let's see if I get any strain back. I do. Doing good on that. Let's see here. Okay, so yeah, I think actually I think what I'll do. Yeah, no reason to complicate this. More mean words. Keep it simple. Yeah. Let's see here. So I think I look at the spirit who's still sort of like tugging on my pant leg, and then I give him almost sort of a sad, almost like a sad smile, and I sort of like look over at the board demon to kind of include him in this too, and say, "You must know that there's no place for you in the light. Your place is alone in the dark." And I'll make a verbal attack on them. And let's see, I have advantage on that again.
And they have
For extra
disadvantage
charm.
on defending against it. You're such a small and young ninja. You have a caring voice. Is it booming, or is it just sort of like ominous?
No. If anything, it's actually sort of like almost convivial. Like it's actually kind of like good natured for the most part.
It's like so out of place, calm, and confident that it seems like to be true. That sort of thing.
Right. It's kind of like, it's believable because it's kind of matter.
Cool.
I'm saying this just because that's the way it is. All right. Anyway, here we go. I only got one hit again, but you have disadvantage to defend against it. Lonely Spirit.
That's true. You're going after the lonely spirit.
Yes, I did aim this more specifically at him.
All right, just want to make sure.
I would have AoE'd the other guy if I could, but it doesn't make sense.
Sure. So, again, even with the disadvantage, he manages to roll against it. And
the battle of wills here.
he looks up at you and he's like, "You may fool the big dummy, but you're not going to fool me." But he does take one strain from it.
Yeah.
Right, you got one hit against him.
Yeah, I'll nickel and dime me to death eventually.
Hey.
His eyes just kind of narrow a little bit.
This bone lightning spirit, it's like weird black hair sort of like falling in place, scratching its featureless face except for this shrieking mouth, sort of like eyes that would be staring at you are directly looking at Nikue, and it's just going to open its mouth and attempt to scream and unleash an arc of lightning straight towards Nikue.
Meanwhile, in the other and more terrifying fight...
Don't like this, don't like this.
I don't know. I think your fight is very terrifying. So that's 2 hits. So it will be 2 strain against Nikue, and she has to roll body to defend.
Nikue, take some teamwork on this one.
Okay.
Ugh. I'd like to, but I'm a little busy at the moment.
I failed. Even with the teamwork.
Oh.
Body is not what I'm very good at.
So you will take 3 strain then. How are you attempting to help out there?
I think I try to roll over to I kind of do like a combat roll because there's all these kind of, or actually, I'm more like jump off some of the trees that have grown around and I try to bring the tide cutter to block the lightning, but I'm just too slow in getting there, I think.
Okay, yeah. I think that what happened, just because this seeds right into the angry boar spirit's turn, is that as Ryoden takes his attention away and no longer like trying to intimidate him and shine his light at you. He sort of turns his focus and attention back towards Kusanado, and I think he actually is attempting to like reach out against you, and I think that he maybe like grabbed at you, and he's now going to try to just like tug in at you and slam you to the ground. But let's see if he can do that. Ooh.
That was a lot of dice.
No, it's just one that fell off the table. So that's only one hit against you, actually. So one strain and then a body defense roll.
Yeah. And actually, I'll give you advantage in that. Teamwork, that is.
Yeah.
I think I'm close enough to help.
I hit. I rolled an 8, so I am able to just take
So you
the
just
one.
take one straight.
Okay.
Right, and then you're up.
Okay. I am, as I come running over, I see that I've moved away from, I think he tried to grab me, but it was more of a scratch, he couldn't get his hand on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I get away, and I'm now standing kind of apart from anyone in particular. I'm going to reach up and wipe the sweat from my brow and throw the droplets out away from me, but as they fly away, they turn into kind of liquid kunai that scatter away from me. I'm doing my first elemental attack.
Nice.
Very cool.
Because I have a D10 spirit and a D8 elemental, a D8 body, and a D10 martial. So I'm pretty much, I have all my techniques are with the sword, but I'm equally good at elemental
Equally good at
attacks.
both. Surprisingly good at the elemental attacks.
Okay, I get 2 hits.
I'm gonna give you, teamwork on that just because I haven't used it yet.
Okay, 3 hits. I'm sending 2 towards the former hammer owner, and 1 towards the lightning axe, which is my
You
name.
don't even need to roll defense. You take both of them out. So
Okay.
what do you do? You scrub it.
So
They just-
so I spin around they throw these kunai, and they go like just, and they appear to be water, even like kind of almost gloppy, but as they hit, they cut like as if they were steel, and these things just get kind of hit with like a swarm of these tiny kunai just come ripping into them, and they both drop
out of nowhere. Yeah, she
nowhere.
just sort of slumps over, and as the consume her, and he just completely falls flat to the ground. At this point, I think that the lonely spirit is smart enough to realize that you guys are a little bit scary, and he's going to attempt to go scampering off, unless you guys would like to do anything to try to stop him from doing so.
I think the sight of my fallen mentor and the fact that I'm at 6 strain and I've just used a lot of my primal power and I'm low on chakra and all these things. I like my instinct is hand goes to the sword and then I release it, and move back to check on my fallen master.
I think that makes sense. So, sorry, didn't you have something?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna run after a few steps. I'm probably not gonna be as fast as this thing. I think I sort of reach out and there's maybe like a vine or something that just sort of grabs onto it and turns it to look at me, and I kind of look at it and just say quietly, just loud enough for it to hear me, but hopefully not for the boys. Just say, if you feel alone, you don't get people to like you by attacking them. And then I let it go.
Okay, we are out of combat, and in this game, skills aren't really a huge part of the game, but there is something called a scene check, which is basically when a scene reaches sort of like a climax or like an interesting turning point. And I think this will very much be that, just the idea of whether or not you kind of have some effect on this thing or not. So you could attempt to use I think smarts or spirit probably in terms of just reaching out to this thing, trying to connect with it.
I think I would prefer to use spirit.
Go for it. Yeah,
My
I think spirit makes more sense.
my approach is less logical and more just like
Yeah,
the overwhelming
heartfelt.
force of my
Yeah.
naive personality.
Stop
Totally.
being
Roll
evil.
spirit and
Stop
see if
being
you're connected.
evil, spirit. No, I rolled a 4.
Yeah. So it's sort of it turns to you, and for a moment it like wants to, and it's like they're always mean to me. And then it just head sort of goes down, and it just sort of scampers off and disappears into the night. And I think that at that point, we're going to say that this is going to be the scene at which we flash back to earlier in the day, talk about some of the character creation things that you guys did as well. But I think we'll probably take a quick break before we do that. So we'll take like a 5-10 minute break, and we'll be right back to get into all that other stuff.
Awesome.
Right. See you guys real soon.
Hello, what's going on, guys? Thank you, Alex, for backing and being excited about it. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I hope you enjoy what you've seen so far. So just a little bit about the combat that we jumped into. The point in it is really to be very cinematic, move really quickly, but still have a lot of stuff happening, a lot of things that you can interact with in your environment, and allow a lot of creativity for the players. In, this sort of genre, which is Naruto, but also like a lot of other Shonen Jump sort of stuff, a lot of, adolescent action anime. Each new character that you come across sort of functions differently, has their own trademark, has something new that they're adding to the world and the magic that's happening. So I wanted to allow people to do that and play characters with a lot of unique details that they can add in to the things that they're doing and the decisions that they make about their characters. But the game is also not all fighting, and normally we would not jump as directly into combat, but wanted to show off those rules for the stream. A lot of the game is also about storytelling. It has storytelling game aspects, and a lot of it, as I mentioned, is collaborative world building. The scenario that we did earlier was a little dark, and that is partially because one of the things we settled on when we were doing our collaborative world building was the idea of the undead and the idea of the city that is sort of a bastion of hope, that is sort of pushing out the undead. And one of the most fun things about playing the game, at least for me running it, and I hope when you're playing it as well, is coming up with your own details for your village background that you choose, and then mashing those up against the village background choices that other players choose and create as well. So let's talk about that a little bit. Talk about some of the choices people made when creating characters. Talk about the village background decisions that led us to the world that we're playing in tonight. And then we'll do some scenes as would normally happen in a game that wasn't for a demo. With your mentors, with the village backgrounds that you created so that you can interact with that stuff, and we could show that aspect of the game as well. Liza, do you want to talk a little bit? Because I feel like maybe you were one of the first people to have some ideas of the kind of world that you wanted to be in. Do you want to talk a little bit about the village background that you chose and some of the decisions that you were prompted to make that led you to where we ended up?
Sure. I actually went last when we were doing character creation. But
in terms of picking the village background?
Yeah.
So I should point out that each character picks a ninja archetype, which kind of determines your special powers, basically. And they also pair that with a village background, which sort of allows you to define one section of the world that's specific to you but affects everyone. So which one did you end up picking?
I chose the village spirits. Because I picked the gifted ninja and sort of spiritual stuff is sort of the thing my character is really good at. I felt like that made a lot of sense. We had at that point sort of already bandied about this idea that there was some sort of onslaught of the living dead happening, and I was curious sort of what what was the relationship with dead people like in this world before they started walking around and attacking people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, the veneration of ancestral spirits is super common in tons of cultures all around the world, including many Asian cultures. So I thought it would be interesting if the culture for our world kind of had a history of, a practice of maintaining contact with those who had passed on, but in a much more sort of benevolent way. And the idea of, burial practices or offerings for the dead or things like that, being an
Mm-hmm.
important part of the culture, and how, that's probably been outlawed and changed significantly when the dead are a threat to the living. And I was really curious, playing a young person, sort of what is it like having older people who are telling you these conflicting things about what you should believe. Um,
Sure.
um,
Right, because also connected to the village background is each character creates a mentor that's an older ninja in the village that is very connected to that village background. It's a way for them to interact with that through role playing and through actually having a connection to that part of the world. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but your mentor is specifically a person who reveres the old ways of actually honoring the dead and speak with the dead. It's a very magical world, and I think we said that the dead literally used to be spirits that you could conjure up and talk to and still have some sort of relationship after they passed on to another world, right?
yeah, that's right. Um, yeah, so Nikoi's mentor is this guy named Shizuru, who is sort of um, atypical for his beliefs about spirits and the way that they ought to be treated. And Nikoi just sort of naturally has the power to hear and understand spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he found out about this and has been kind of slowly coercing or trying to convince her to see things his way. He's a hermit. He's kind of an iconoclast. And so, Nikoi is like grew up on a farm,
Sure.
and is sort of used to spending time on the fringes of this society. And
Enough of an outsider that hearing different, like you don't trust the conventional thing as 100% truth right away necessarily. But yeah. So your background, the spirits allowed you to sort of like define how you had that special relationship with the village spirits, and it's that you actually have the innate ability to hear them. And I think that drew your character to this mentor who is an outcast and who wants to foster talk to spirits and wants to remember the old ways. But why are they old ways? I think that maybe relates a bit to really both Reed and Scott's character. Maybe let's go to Scott's village background and some of those details first.
I know. I picked the village war as the background connected to my character, and what happened was we kind of were coming up with these ideas as we were talking and kind of circling around, looking at the different backgrounds. And when we knew that spiritualism was going to be so a big part of it, or the treatment of spirits, burial rites. The idea of the war is actually kind of two wars. It started with a war between two groups of humans um, that was so nasty that all of the usual burial rites were ignored or forgotten, leaving kind of battlefields where the dead could not be properly taken care of, which then led to some of the corruptions of these spirits who kind of came back as wicked or confused or certainly malevolent, if not in mind then in action, spirits. And so what that happened was more people were killed, many more burial rites weren't practiced, and it became a self-replicating endless supply of enemies, and what was started as a war between two groups of people became a war with humanity versus the spirits of the dead, who were much more prevalent and dangerous at night. And all of society were kind of driven back into hiding, and the night became synonymous with death for basically all of humanity, which kind of led to Raiden's background and Reed's description of what he contributed to the village.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a good connective maneuver right there. So I had the village clans as my prompt, because I figured that with we had pretty good idea on like sort of the spiritual situation, some history, but I felt like it would be probably a good idea to get an idea like what sort of the landscape of the world is like right now. Kind of my thought for this was that if we're in sort of a sort of necromantic post-apocalypse kind of scenario here, where it's the night is dangerous and the like cities are sort of reasonably secure islands and whatnot, it's a probably very tightly controlled society. So the clans, such as it is, are probably groups of people who have very specific like governing roles, and also there's probably like some very specific like guilds and other. We didn't really get into that as much, but like probably everything is like people are very like tightly constrained into these groups. In terms of like the most relevant ones, and of course Justin has very helpfully provided prompts for all of these. So like one of them was like who is most prominent among the clans, and so it made sense, I thought, to go with the idea of sort of a clerical class, basically light mages, since we were kind of going in a more like fantasy setting, who man the walls, keep the lights on, and hold the dead back at night. So that was that, and then we ended up calling them light keepers, after the idea that probably cities have sort of almost like a light type structure that they're built around. Which is sort of like the temple that the clerics operate out of. Another one of the prompts was, who's most feared among the clans, and so we got the idea. Kind of from that came the idea of like, all right, well, probably again like internal dissent, or the idea of like trying to go back to the old ways, as it were, of like dealing with spirits and the dead. Probably the light keepers don't really like that idea. So it's probably seen as dangerous at best.
Yeah. I think everyone's reaction to old tendencies to interact with the dead, or the way that they treated the dead in general, shifted greatly once the dead started to rise from the grave and attack cities and spread across the land and corrupt it in weird and strange ways.
Right, exactly. So taking that idea, basically so it's like, all right, so basically, perhaps unsurprisingly, the sort of ruling almost clerical class had ended up with an inquisition. Not called that, of course. Basically, a secret, like a sort of secret society within the Light Keepers called the Extinguishers, who are supposed to not only eliminate if somehow like evil spirits get inside of a city, but they're also supposed to like root out and extinguish any sort of like trace of like the old ways, or basically like dangerous ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So those are some of the
wouldn't like Nico's inherent ability probably much if they knew about it.
We keep that one a little secret.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. That would be that would definitely get you would definitely be up for a very stern audit at best by the Extinguishers if they figured out that you could do that. You very much created the idea of structure around some of these other fantastic ideas and around the history of the worlds. And actually, if I may, and also part of this too is sort of answering the question of like what function do ninjas serve, because we played this game in a couple of different settings, and sort of what exactly do ninja do, or what are ninja to other people, is of course a very relevant question to the setting.
Yeah, we're certainly the goal of the game is not to ninjas from history at all. It's much more so a fantastical, magical interpretation of what ninjas do. So depending on what fantastical world you're in, the shape that can take can really vary a lot.
Exactly.
But so you guys kind of ended on this people that wayfind in the darkness.
Yeah, I think that I propose the idea of literally just calling because the idea is that the lightkeepers and they keep the cities running, but someone has to travel between the cities. So who better than to do that but people who are masters of moving at high speeds and going unseen, and if they get caught out at night, killing things like some sort of terrifying lightning spitting bone spirit, what have you.
There's a strange logic to it.
Hypothetically,
it does. Hypothetically, that doesn't really happen very often, but if it did somehow, yeah. So yeah, that's
yeah, and so we met mentor who prominent role in the earlier adventure, and that was Masako. Masako being connected to the war by being someone who is a ninja, is a wayfinder, and is actively still involved with keeping the undead at bay and learning their secrets and fighting them in general. But I don't think we have met Ryoden's mentor yet. Do you want to talk about them a little bit and how you created them and how they're connected to your background?
For sure, yes. And actually, we did meet Jin very. If you do
right,
recall,
in your flashback.
In your flashback, you're right.
Yes, when I was reversing the not actually so innocent spirit. So, but yeah, so the idea for Yasunaga Jin, my mentor. So, my thought with just to give you a little more context on Ryoden is that he's kind of a failed cleric. Like he was actually he was basically training to be a light keeper. So he has he picked the book learning on all this stuff. Excellent. The unfortunate thing though is that he can't actually. He tried. Believe me, he tried, but he couldn't actually use like the light magic that the clerics actually use. So his mentor, who very much appreciated the fact that he would, ace the written portion of the test, at the very least. She came up with the idea of sort of shunting him sideways into the ninja program and making him a wayfinder. Why is that? Because she is actually an extinguisher. So now I don't really know that, but the idea of like having a mentor I have a good relationship with. We have it's not like a super close one, but it's like a fairly professional relationship.
Yeah.
I like her. She likes me. She respects how hard I try, even though I couldn't do the thing. But she saw an opportunity here. So it's like, okay, the extinguishers, of course, are kind of like internal affairs. Occasionally, they might try to get somebody into the Wayfinders to report back to them. So I don't know that that's what I'm doing, but, I trust her. So if she's going to be coming along and like offering helpful advice and like, giving me insights into sort of the terrible entities out there, great. And if she asks, oh, by the way, like, I heard a rumor that there's a ninja out there that can talk to spirits. Is that true?
No.
Who knows? Who knows what I might say?
Yeah, and so we had a big old spitballing session on stuff, feeding off of each other's ideas, and it is very much so the game master's job to take these ideas and turn them into an adventure. And a lot of the way that they do that is through setting scenes. Scenes are much more GM facing in terms of the mechanics, which is why we saved that to the second half of the stream to do. And they really give the time to strive to do when they set the scenes, chief amongst which are allowing characters to interact with their village background, allowing characters to interact with their mentors, and allowing characters to interact with each other, and to do that in a way that's like set in a time and a place and with people just in the make-believe world. So you're just trying to add some degree of immediacy and reality to what is otherwise imaginary. So we're gonna set some scenes. We're gonna flash back to earlier that day, before these three dove into the darkness for the first time, some not for the first time, but others for the first time. And I think we're actually going to be in the large white tower in the center of the village of Neverending Light. And I think this is sort of as the sun is just beginning to set. We see in the middle of this tower that has like a large circular, like iron reinforced room where like 24 monks in like thick white robes with sort of like white cloth that seems to have been like drenched in water wrapped around their heads are all like sitting perfectly equidistance from each other around a large sort of pit in the middle of the room. And they all sort of are sitting silently, seemingly like concentrating their energy. And then they all at the same time sort of open their eyes. They raise their arms up. They pull them back in towards their body. They each reach out an arm to the left to grab the shoulder of the person to their left. And then each with their right arm extending out forward shoots superheated energy towards the middle of this room. And this energy starts to swirl around each other as they're sort of like concentrating on it. And it all pushes in towards the center to the point that it bursts with a concussive force and then slams itself back inward. And they created a burning, bright, just like small star, really, with their elemental magic one. And as this thing ignites, you can see coming out from this tower, it sends light along these prism channelways, and the mirrors begin beaming this light off into every corner of this city. And as that happens, like 4 of the monks sort of like remain there, concentrating it to keep it in place. And a lot of the other ones disperse. And one of them sort of like takes this thick, wet bandage, unravels it from their head. And this is Jen. And Jen is walking up to Ryodan, who is standing and watching. What does Jen look like?
So Jen is she's an older ninja. She might be actually vintage as Misako, now that I think about it. And she is she has a kind of sort of a harsh lines to her face. Like she has kind of like an angular face, kind of like a bit of a sharp nose.
Sure, severe features.
Yeah, but to sort of counteracting that, she usually has kind of a pleasant expression on her face.
That's cool. It's a neat comment.
So yeah, so she oh yeah, and she also particularly when dealing with ritual fire magic, regulations keep your hair kind of short. So she has her hair kind of tied very tightly back behind her head. It's like going a little bit gray. Would have been probably like extremely black back in the day, but yeah. Anyway, so but yeah, I think that, like I said, she usually has kind of a pleasant aspect to her. So when she sees Ryodan kind of like lurking in the corner of the room, just watching this, I imagine she would just sort of like give him like a pleasant smile and just go walking over.
I am going to say that the normal pleasant smile that seems from her, you've known her long enough to just be able to tell that it's not quite as genuine as it normally is. And
fair enough.
As you mentioned, there's the graying sort of starting to form at temples, and today is a day, it's a lighting, where there were people that were sort of your same age, some of whom have done their lighting for the first time. And you would intimately know that this is a responsibility that she'd hoped you would one day be able to take over for her. And even if not today, eventually, but that you've both kind of come to a crossroads where that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And considering it is the day of, I don't think I don't think the idea that you're joining the Wayfinder being sprung on you right at this moment. I imagine that this is something that has sort of been in the works.
Yeah, I think
if it's happened suddenly.
Yeah, I'm always imagining that this, like, I'm already wearing my my tactical hiking gear from earlier. Like I'm already kind of like ready to go because I'm going to be going out later.
Yeah, and she sort of sorry, remind me what your relationship with Jen is. Good or strained or
it's no, it's good.
It's good.
We're not super close, but like she appreciates like how hard I've tried, even if I just literally can't do like proper light magic. And I appreciate I appreciate the fact that she didn't give up, and I appreciate the fact that she's taught me everything that I actually have the capacity to. So
sure,
yeah,
and
so it's a good relationship.
I think she sort of is saying that to you as she sort of like goes up behind you and puts your shoulder, and she says, listen, don't think of this as a failure. She says, this is a new opportunity, and you may not even realize it yet, but it's an opportunity that may be extremely beneficial to the entire city. It may be the thing that, at the end of the day, protects us. It may be critically important that you're in the right place at the right time with your eyes and the head on your shoulders. And she sort of like points at you at your head. And she says, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just kind of I give her a bit of a forced smile back and say, well, someone has to bear the light into the dark places, right?
She's like, someone does. And she says, and unfortunately, the darkness that corrupts within the city may be even more dangerous to us all than that in the valley below. And she says, remember that. And if you ever see anything that would compromise the city and create corruption within it, you tell me and me only.
I nod my head, and one of the various Lightkeeper platitudes is the old standby of the brightest light casts the darkest shadow.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. So I say that to her, just kind of ignore what she said. Like that's kind of like that's a thing that the Lightkeeper kind of are saying.
Sure. And so she'll say she's up to the castle. So she'd like to walk you over to the castle that the Wayfinders stay at. Meanwhile, I think more on the edge of town, we can do a little bit more lighthearted. I think meanwhile,
it's a dark setting, Justin.
I know. I will also say that sometimes, listen, things get dark. It's ninjas, there's young people, there's murder, there's killing. This one was maybe a little especially dark just because we did set it with undead and all of that sort of stuff, but tone-wise, you can do a lot of stuff with it.
Also, it was night.
Also, literally, it was dark. It was a dark game. But anyway, yeah, in a more pleasant area, I think. Probably out towards the outskirts of town, probably not in as nice of a house. I think Shizuru is preparing a lunch. Where is Nikue? Is Nikue on her way there? There already?
I think probably, the classic, like, running late montage at the beginning of everything. And I think maybe Nikue is running late because she was trying to convince Kusanado to come with her and bring something important.
Oh, cool. So that's up to you guys if you want that to happen.
Sure. Yes.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
so
you're
running late, but you're kind of...
Justin, you cut out for a
Sorry,
second.
Justin, I missed that whole thing.
I apologize. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so you're sort of running late, but you're sort of dragging is Kusanado going begrudgingly, happily?
I think he's going dutifully, as he tends to do many.
As tends to be his emotion.
Yeah, I think Nikoigi is doing that thing of like running ahead and then seeing he's sort of behind her and coming back and like grabbing his hand and like, oh, we can shortcut this way.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think I'm moving with a certain efficiency, and it's not used to the chaotic pace, the stops and starts, and the sprints, and then the lollygags that are occurring. So I'm kind of like, I move, and then I'm just kind of,
You're both moving at the same effective speed, but she's moving forward and backward very quickly, just moving at the same pace.
That's accurate.
Yeah, and like darting down a side street and coming back and just like sticking a little flower behind your ear and going, I think finally we do get there. I think as we get to the door, I kind of turn around, suddenly struck with a little moment of self-consciousness, and just say, he can be kind of strange.
It would be helpful if I knew why you had invited me along, why it was so crucial that I come. But I imagine everything will be explained at the proper time.
Yes, we should go inside before we talk about that, probably. I sort of look around, not at all suspiciously.
Yeah.
My confidence in the soundness of this plan diminishes moment to moment, but I shall trust you at this point. After you.
And then I say, plus, he's a great cook.
I think.
Yeah. So as the door sort of pushes in, what do we see? What does Shizuru's dwelling look like?
It's very sort of cluttered, but not necessarily like, but well organized.
Oh, so there's stuff piled on top of each other, but purposefully piled on top of each other.
Exactly.
That's a very specific detail, but I like it a lot.
And lots of like, you can tell that there's stuff, but not necessarily exactly what it is. Like stuff is behind curtains or in drawers, and there's like a sense in the place of more than meets the eye.
That makes a lot of sense. A lot of objects that appear mundane, but maybe in a different time would not have been so mundane or carry significant meaning to certain people.
Yeah.
So and what does Shizuru look like, do you think?
At first glance, he probably looks a lot older than he actually is. I think he just has like a lot of kind of untamed facial hair.
Never has a great haircut.
Yeah, and also just sort of the weight of responsibility. And I think he also has this sort of habit of like looking into corners and like looking at things that maybe aren't there.
Probably has just lived a stressful life if he is sort of a bit of an outcast for a reason. I think probably over a meal, like probably a bunch of vegetables he's in the middle of like preparing and like is about to throw on like a small little fire, and he sort of looks up and he's like, oh, come in. He's like, you brought Kusanada.
Yes, I did. I figured an old man like you could use a little bit of company for lunch.
Oh, well, we have, he looks around and he's like, throw on and starts chopping up some more vegetable. He says, please come in and sit. He says, what brings you here today?
Well, and I sort of look a little furtively over at Kusanado.
I think Kusanado is like taking off his shoes with like a very formal grace and like actually stepping out of them and then stepping back and putting them to the side and then shifting his sword out of his sash and moving it to his right side, which is the polite, so it'd be harder to draw, and like puts it down and sits like politely and just waits to be spoken to.
So he says, Kusanado, somehow you're an older man than I am.
My master says I have an old soul. I take it as a compliment.
He's like,
And I take
believe
yours
it is,
as yours.
and I believe it's true.
But
He says-
it'd
Sorry.
be foolish of me to take your years and mistake your nature for a lack of wisdom.
It's like, well, I don't know how wise I am. It's like a lot. Many would use other words to describe me, but who's to say? It's all relative, isn't it?
I would not know.
He says, "You'll understand one day." I would. And he says, it's a big day for y'all. You better eat up. Like I'm preparing a special meal.
He like draws the thing, like holding the sleeve with one hand, and and reaches for the whatever dish is served.
Nikue has already started eating. Just sort of like whatever
Just
is there,
grabbing
like
some
just
raw vegetables.
yeah, just like I
Yeah.
think like grabbing a chopsticks and just sort of like taking it as soon as he's finished cutting it. Maybe even sort of
Yeah.
like sitting up on like wherever next to him wherever he's chopping and just kind of leans over and said, "Kusanado, I thought maybe you would like to tell Shizuru about your friend." She
think
says
this-
very
Sort of just looks up,
unsubtly.
like, huh?
Like Kusanado's, unbreakable, poise is not just challenged but shattered. It looks over and says, like, "That's a secret. I told you that was a secret. You weren't supposed to tell anyone."
Yeah, but he's not okay. He says I don't know, he's saying things and I don't know what to do about it. Shizuru is totally cool about this sort of thing. He taught me all about it. That's why I brought you here.
Kusanado's hand goes to his sword as if he can fight this problem. It's like Master Shizuru, I seem to have garnered the attention of a spirit when I was hunting with my master, and I did not know what to do and did not feel right slaying this spirit, so I have hidden this to my shame from my master until I could determine the best way to not kill that which means me no harm.
It's a really cute spirit.
He starts to, when you start saying this, he gets really serious. He stops chopping. Maybe there's something that he should be turning on the stove that he's not really. He seems really intent, like genuinely intent, and he sort of gets down on your level and he says, Tell me everything about it. Where is it now?
It's because it's day, it stays out of sight, and which makes it very convenient for me because it always follows me around when it can. But at this point, it is invisible and harmless. But at night, it visits me when I'm trying to sleep and wants to play, which has become increasingly difficult to. My technique suffers from my lack of quality slumber, as my master would say.
Yeah, he sort of like gets excited as you say that, and he sort of like goes over, starts like he like is moving some of his stacks of stuff, and he's like going to pull out a book, and he like sort of like finds a particular page that talks about a few different types of spirits, and he says a playful spirit that wants to play at night. He says that seems well. Does it keeps you from sleep?
It doesn't understand that I need to get my rest, and it is very curious. And if I'm sleeping, then it might go away and rouse
says,
my
and you've
master.
seen this, Nikue?
And I kind of reach into my belt and pull out like a little rolled up. I drew it.
What does it look like?
Scott.
Well, yeah.
I guess it looks kind of like a probably a small, like toddler-sized, vaguely humanoid form, but it's got like slightly oversized head and kind of like dark eyes and kind of a nondescript mouth. It's like a mouth shape that opens and and or disappears when it's not making any kind of expression, and it just seems to kind of like crawl and climb, over. It kind of seems to
Yeah.
kind of always coming in for the hug. Just likes to likes to nestle and kind of nuzzle. So it's been pretty strange for Kusanado, who doesn't have this kind of is not allowed to have pets, or has no younger siblings. So it's he's been having a hard time with it.
Yeah, that's very cool. He says I would love to see it someday, perhaps tomorrow. And then as he says that, a knock comes at the door, but it's not like a pleasant, like chill knock. It's like a thudding. That's not the music that I want.
Whoa!
Roll initiative again.
Yeah.
I think
Dragon Force.
Kusanado really
Let's go with this one.
with like no dignity, because the sword's in the wrong hand. Spits into his left hand and then forms like a trio of kunai, like at the ready, in alarm.
He turns to you and he says, with his hands, he's like down, and he's like, Nikue, underneath. He's like, hide.
Yeah.
And so he sort of makes sure he stacks his stuff back to hide the books that he was looking at. And he sort of he grabs some food and throws it in the trash to make it look like he wasn't eating with multiple people. And he asks you guys to just clamber into this small little hiding spot that you know about. And
Hold the trash can in with us so I can keep eating.
Okay, great. And
I think
and
Kusanado crams in and has some and then suddenly realizes to Nikue, and then has a little blushes noticeably.
Has little what? Noticeably? Sorry.
Little blushes, little red spots appear in his cheeks.
Oh, he could be in trouble and he's not.
He's also close to another person. His physical space is very
makes him more comfortable. Yeah.
A little bit.
That makes sense.
He's a very chaste young man.
Yeah. And so you guys sort of huddle into this small little hiding spot that I imagine is just sort of dirty and also cluttered and has some of his sort of rarer items. And you hear the pounding on the door, and you can sort of hear through a sort of door and floorboards, just an accusatory well, who's in there? Who are you talking to? And he's like, I'm just having dinner by myself. And Nikue, you've heard this maybe before. I think he gets hassled and gets given a hard time, but it's sort of hard to hear the muffled yelling that's sort of happening, but you hear crashing start to happen, and you hear sort of the sizzle of it sounds like the stuff that he was cooking is being thrown to the ground, and it's starting to get quite scary from where you are. It sort of eventually there's quiet. There's sort of a long moment of quiet where you're not sure what's happening, and then Shizuru does end up opening the door of the hiding spot where you were, and his hair looks kind of tousled. He looks like maybe he got roughed up a little bit, and the inside of his house is trashed. And he says he turns specifically to you, Kusanado, and he's like, "I'm so sorry about that." It's I know you're not used to such things.
I tend to. I think Kusanado tries to start speaking and is, struggling to find the words that are both respectful and displaying his discomfort, especially to an elder.
Yeah.
But he seems also very I think he's a little why was I an honorable and well trained? I only have honorable intentions. Why was I put in this position?
Yeah, totally. And he sort of looks to Nikue, who he knows has had to deal with this sort of thing, and he says, "You two have a big and important day ahead of you." And he looks at Nikue and he says, you go and be an excellent wayfinder. Be just what they want you to be. And he says, I'm sorry about lunch, but you should run along.
As we're leaving, I'm gonna kind of lean over to him and say, tell me who did this.
Yeah, and he'll say, the extinguishers come wearing masks. Never know exactly who it is.
And
He says, be careful. They lurk around every corner.
as we're going outside, I'm just going to...
He's like, or they are me, also.
I'm just going
Potentially.
to reach into, I think maybe even just onto the hem of something I'm wearing and pull off like a burr. And just drop it onto the ground and just start pouring my power into it. So that these like burr plants are gonna grow up around his doorway.
Ooh,
So the next
very
time that
cool.
someone goes through there, I'll be able to find them.
I thought you said
That's really neat.
and I got really
That's really cool. You could like attach like the sort of seedy stuff that attach to clothing. Okay, so you guys end up at the Wayfinder Castle where Renato lives. And as you arrive there, you find Jin, the lightkeeper and monk, standing with Ryoden and speaking with Masako. And Masako, as he sees the both of you walk up, he says, let's change these. Sorry. He says, meet your new teammate. It's like a surprise inclusion to today's expedition. This is Ryoden.
And Roden just gives you both a big like just a big smile. It's like, yo.
I think Kusanado, looks over at Nikoi and but then quickly like bows respectfully, and says, "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. I was not aware that we had need nor vacancy for another teammate. Where have you come from, and why are you joining us now, if I may ask? I mean, maybe so bold."
That's a great question. I think you guys have kind of been away from adults things to talk about. Like go get ready for
Play
tonight,
nice,
I guess.
children.
Yeah.
Okay.
You broke up a touch there, Justin, but I assume that you said that we sort of stepped aside to get ready, kind of.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I didn't mean to interrupt the moment here.
No.
Character reaction.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, and I think, yeah. Okay, he's sort of like he's kind of like placating hands. It says, okay, well, I don't make the decisions about who goes where. I just follow orders, same as any of the rest of us. But yes, I expect we haven't been introduced before because I have been undergoing a bit of specialized training with, and I sort of like gesture vaguely back at where Jin and Masako maybe are still talking. I don't know. It says, anyway, yes, I've been undergoing.
It's a very Jeff Goldblum answer if I've ever heard one.
Hey,
I'm saying that as a
yeah, exactly. But anyway, it's like, yeah, so I'm just going specialized training with with the Lightkeepers, and yeah, I guess they thought that you could use a little bit of extra light out there tonight.
I step forward and kind of return that look to Kusanado, maybe thinking about the discussion we had on the way over here of like, hey, well, that's what happens when you are friends with spirits and you got to be careful. Um, so both of us kind of think like, oh God, who's this
Yeah.
narc? Uh, but
the narc.
You literally did show up with a light cube, so
I know.
think, yeah, it's pretty.
So
obvious.
I reach forward, and in my extended hand, there's just like a little flower. And it's like, well, it's always good to have a little extra light on your side. I'm Nikue.
And he takes the flower, and kind of like gives it a look, and then actually just like tucks it into like a pocket on the front of his jacket, and says, "Oh, a pleasure." And sorry, and he points over to Kusanado, and sorry, didn't catch your name.
I'm Kamatari Kusanado.
And kind of realizing that you're a very discipline driven individual. Actually, Ryoden does give you a bit of a bow and says, I look forward very much to working.
As do I. I've heard that you mentioned that you have secret techniques. Obviously, kind of gotten towards Kusanado's curiosity. He's the one who likes to have special techniques. So it's like, what kind of training have you, specialized training have you received?
It's like they didn't bring him in because I'm not good enough, did they?
Yeah, it's like, why do you know some cool stuff that I don't? Oh, this is unbearable.
Yeah.
You're not even carrying a sword. I don't understand.
I kind of look over at Kusanado. I'm sure his sword isn't as cool as yours.
I suddenly feel like I'm overcompensating.
All right. I think that's a great place to call the team meets.
Yeah.
Now, let's jump back to later in the day.
Now we all trust each other.
We don't trust each other. So you guys are out in the darkness. Masako is lying on the ground, still shivering from electricity that are coursing through him. You've just seen a spirit run away. You've just been attacked by sort of these evil undead entities. And you guys are going to be free to handle this however you would like, because I would like to talk about experiences. So the GM is, it's their job to set aside scenes and, to encourage certain sorts of interactions between people. But each character after each encounter can also set a scene of their own. And these scenes should be directly related to experiences, which are different prompts that they each have on their character sheets. And those experiences are split up between desire experiences and responsibility experiences, sort of representing the conflict within young people coming of age. You guys can sort of take narrative control from here. You can, if you want, travel back towards the village. You can do another thing out where you are. You can say that you got home safe and we could go to the next morning. But probably we should start with whoever wants to do something that is the most immediate, if anyone has anything in mind.
Do you mind if I seize the initiative? And by you, I mean everyone.
Go for it.
Cool. Yeah, because I had sort of an immediate reaction that's kind of more of an internal one. So this happens right as the fight resolves. Mm-hmm. Which is basically as the lonely spirit kind of scampered away into the dark. There's kind of a moment where Ryoden kind of pulls up some more light around his hand and then kind of lets it go, because he's very much thinking in his head Jin could burn that thing to ash where it stands. I can't. And sort of turns away a little bit from like watching the spirit run away. Meanwhile, in the background, Nikoi kind of goes to talk to it, and which I missed. And yeah, there's just sort of like a moment where Ryoden kind of like suddenly has this weird wave of doubt because this fight didn't exactly go the way it's like it goes in like when you're reading the textbook.
Sure.
Kind of started with the team leader getting sniped. Hold on a moment. Hey, watching it.
Verbal attack against the cat.
Actually, yes, and it seems to have. He appears to have failed defense roll, so we're good for the moment. But
Good.
yeah, sorry.
No, I think that's an even more significant moment considering that Ryoden's almost superpower is just his like uncanny ability to seem calm in the weirdest situations. So it's like he did put on at least the facade of this weird calm throughout that fight. And then, like, the idea at the end, like, suddenly the wave of doubt hits them. Like,
right?
No longer maintain it. Is
the meme for Ryoden absolutely here. Basically, just a picture of his sort of like perpetual, like vague smile, and then just captioned with internal screaming.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah. So it's he has this like weird doubt of like he's like his powers are basically fake. He failed at being a cleric, and now we're out here in this first mission, and like there might very well be a person dying over there in the weeds. It's he hasn't really had a chance to assess whether or not Kusanado got critically injured or kind of lost track of Nikoi in that fight too. Bad situational awareness. Et cetera. All these things.
Piling and playing over again. It makes sense.
Yeah. And then, but because fortunately because like they're in the dark and like nobody is around to like in this moment of confusion to ask like what is happening with you in your brain, he kind of manages to sort of stuff it down in the memory hole a little bit and sort of like restaples the smile to his face.
I hope someone in the future uses memory.
Yeah. Just as a defensive attack, that would be bad for that'd be bad for Ryoden. Anyway, but he just sort of like for a moment there his smile kind of wavered. He sort of reaffixes it to his face, and then as though like none of that just happened, he kind of like turns and goes like leaping over to where Misako was laying on the ground, and I think at this point probably Kusanado's there as well, and basically just like jumps down right next to Kusanado, puts a hand throws a hand on his shoulders, basically like, is he all right? But yeah, that's basically the scene. It's just like this moment of like internal chaos, and this is what this is because just to mention there's kind of a long list of things, and this is hiding my true feelings.
So even if there was some outward like light display, it was very minimal, and you managed to like hide it with no one.
Yeah, like all that really the only outward display would have been that he stopped smiling for like 5 seconds,
and I can't imagine anyone's noticing.
No, and again, like if someone had been nearby to notice, maybe this moment of vulnerability could have turned into something. But as it was, no. The shields are back up, the smile is back on, things are fine.
That's very cool. So you said you marked the
anyway, and then that can go right into
feeling
or whatever. Yeah.
That's very cool. All right. Does anybody else have something that they'd like to do?
I think that as Raiden comes over and puts a hand on Kusanado's shoulder, then there's also a hand on Kusanado's other shoulder, and suddenly Daigoro, the spirit, is like sitting on his shoulder and it's like tapping him like, they're there.
Man.
Wait, hold on. I could have just there's this really funny picture in my head there. Me like have my hand on his shoulder, and the spirit put your hand on his shoulder. We both kind of look at each other over the top of your head. Like
like leaning back over.
Wait a minute.
I think Kusanado goes and says, "Oh, yet another showing
Wait,
its
what?
true. Let me."
Yeah, you cut out for a sec, Scott.
There you go. He goes, "Another spirit has shown itself. Let me handle this." And he grabs this, kind of gently pulls Daigoro, which is the name of the spirit, off the shoulder and like hides it behind his body and is trying to stuff it into his shirt. Like, let me just banish this in a technique that my master has shown me, he says, with no, like, completely, with no convincing
like lying
quality.
might be a skill that Ryoden has, but I don't think it's a skill that Kusanada
And
has.
then he turns around and says, like, "It is gone," as like the creature kind of pops its head back around outside of his shirt and he tries to stuff it back down.
Yeah, I think at this point I kind of come back up and like see it, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
That's great. How does Ryoden...
That's an excellent question, because I think that like that for a second there would have kind of shorted his brain out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were kind of almost on overload.
Yeah, so yeah, it's basically like I see like so at first like I see the thing, and just as I'm about to be like, ghosts, you're like, oh no, I've got this, definitely don't actually got it in any way, shape, or form, obviously. So yeah, Rodin just is like he's still got the smile on his face, but like definitely like he's doing like the head cock, like what?
Yeah.
Like if your eyes go down to the spirit and then if they come back up, then Kusanado is staring at you straight in the eyes, and then you see his hand is on the on his sword.
Yeah.
Being like, this is not what you think, and an explanation is in order, and you deserve one.
You have a very expressive face. Yeah, so okay. So I think Ryoden, he sort of like holds up a finger and says, you do realize you're most likely spirit.
Sorry, what did you say, Reed?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. He holds up. He just kind of like holds.
Oh.
So he's still being friendly.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, he says like, Kusanado, you are most likely being influenced by a spirit.
No, I just have a new friend who puts my life in danger just by being near me. I see your point.
And who doesn't want to be alone in the dark, for instance? Just wants to be near someone. Does this sound familiar?
There's a difference.
Cute.
Yeah, this would look terrifying. Yeah. So yeah, Ryoden kind of like sort of aims his smile in your direction now, Nikoe, and says, "I'd be interested to see what evidence you have for that, but." And it's sort of like our leader is down. Can we just get rid of the spirit and then talk about it later?
That should not be a problem, as he's still like trying to wrangle this creature. He's like crawling down his back now, and he's like undignified, like reaching for it. Like, yes, I shall send this thing away, and we shall speak of it no more this evening. Daigoro, stop.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What, out of curiosity, what experience are you fulfilling here?
This is reveal something important.
That is definitely revealing something important.
Yeah, and I think now, and also revealing something important, both to obviously to Ryoden, but also something to himself. Like when faced with the danger to the spirit, like the sense of like protective, and the seriousness of like where like I was drawn to physically defend this spirit from another living person, and the desire to do that is something that needs to be explored. And also the words of like, am I being influenced? Am I being tricking me? Am I being a sap? Is like, so, like very.
You had this exchange, and Ryoden kind of like this moment where you're just like looking at the spirit with on the one hand, more affection than you've ever felt for it, and then
Right.
suddenly the doubt also seeping in based on
Yeah,
what he said. So
right.
it's sort of a mix.
It's like, I love this thing. Oh my god, I'm being brainwashed. Going on.
Yeah.
Very complicated.
That
Oh my
is very
god, what if my
complicated.
master finds out? Like, what am I going to do? Very angsty.
Very complicated, but very cool. What about Nikue? What is Nikue?
I think I want to dovetail right off of this, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Which is, I think, seeing that now Ryoden, this guy who we're not sure if we can trust, knows about this secret. It's kind of like, all right, it's time to put up or shut up.
You also, just for the record, you see like there is a little light kind of hovering around one of the hand that Ryoden has kind of behind his back. Just so you know.
Yeah, I think seeing that, I'm gonna kind of walk forward and just sort of put my face right up close to Ryoden's face and say, "Look, they wouldn't have kicked you out of the Lightbringers if you had enough light to defend us all the way back. We're not getting back, and we're not getting the Master back unless we try things a little unconventionally."
I kind of like, I'm just sort of like, what?
I know that you think that this is wrong, and you think he's being brainwashed, but he's not. Not all spirits are bad. Some of them want to help us, and I can prove it to you.
Yeah, so this is definitely like this is clashing directly with what I've taught in the past, so hard sell. Yeah. So yeah, you know, okay, so the smile slips off Ryoden's face. And he says, "Interesting. Prove, you say. Can you do it in 10 seconds or less?"
No.
Okay. Can we talk about this later?
No.
And I sort of point again, I'm sort of like at the guy on the ground, I'm like, priority.
Just remember, this is for all of us. And I'm gonna kind of kneel down on the ground and just sort of start concentrating. And I'm going to try to summon a spirit to help us get back.
You can do that.
And I think we see this sort of like part humanoid, part like stag, sort of centaur-y spirit. Eventually sort of emerge from the wood, and I'm sort of like looking at Riot and like, don't do anything. And I sort of walk up and look at it and say, please, we're lost and the night is dark. We are not like you and can't walk in the darkness for long. Can you please help us get home?
Yeah, and the thing, he says, no one has asked me for my help in a long, long time. I would love to get.
And I sort of reach in my bag and pull out like some food. Like I've made an offering and sort of extend it. And with the spirit's consent, sort of heave the body of this adult ninja onto its back, and we start following it, I think, back.
Yeah, you reach out the food, it takes it gladly and sort of shuts its eyes, and the food sort of goes flittering off into the night, and he says, this way. And then you guys walk off into the dark forest. Those are very cool scenes. Thank you guys. My doing it. So yeah, that was a crash course in Kunai Academy. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you again so much to my players. Thank you so much to Manpot for having me on. And I'm also super excited about next week's Gardens of Gulshan finale. That's going to be really fun. Please come hang out. Same Manapot time, same Manapot channel. We'll be doing the last of what has been an excellent adventure. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to throw the game one more time in the Kickstarter if you want to support. Thank you so much for that as well. And you can reach out to me if you want to. I'm at SweaterPumps on Twitter. And anything else anybody wants to plug or say?
I think you nailed it all for me.
Yes, as Justin said,
everything that Justin said.
Tune in for the finale next week and stick around for just a couple minutes. We're going to find another great tabletop stream to raid. Thanks everyone for showing up for this one shot. Thanks to Justin for writing this awesome game and running it for us.
Anytime. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and be sure to check out all of our programming right down here. Come hang out with us on Mana Mornings if you want more behind the scenes stuff and announcements of one shots and things like this. And join our Discord, our social media. Just come game with us.